Scotty, my dude with the fresh goatee, bro. How does it feel to be a grown man?
God, you're such an asshole. I just want to look more like you. I mean, if I could grow a caterpillar like you, bro, and have that stash, I'd be selling way more deals.
Dude, well, it's the only thing that can grow. The rest of this is freaking stubble, so I got to take what I can get.
Well, we're letting it grow. Let's see how long this makes it for the pod. This may be gone by the next one.
You may be shaving that thing off mid-pod, bro. We'll see.
Well, let's get into it, dude.
Let's get into it. Our second virtual podcast. I think the first one turned out all right. We had a couple things to work through. I think, like we laid out the groundwork in that first episode, our goal is to just get better and better at this. I know you and I were logged on 10 minutes early and started 10 minutes late because we were still trying to work through some technical issues, but lo and behold, here we are.
Here we are, dude. I'm excited. I want to talk about some of the big stuff we've been working on the sales side of the business. So we're going to be a little bit more sales oriented today, but I know that there's plenty of stuff that you've listened in on, and I want to get your feedback as a more process oriented person.
Let's run it.
Yeah. So I guess the overarching thing I want to talk about today has been our core initiative about changing our sales process. Over the last, I'm coming up on 8 years in the business, but really as an investor, probably 7 years. It's been really kind of an interesting evolution when the business started. Obviously you and I were part of a team. I was going out and kind of being a closer, and cold calling and wearing all the hats. And as we've definitely grown as a business, and you and I have gotten a lot of coaching, it's just become so clear that creep over time led to like these processes that really just don't work at scale. And so now we have the unique blessing of having to go back and fix an already moving business, versus starting on the right foot. So definitely it's an interesting topic.
Yeah, I was thinking about this recently too, because obviously you and I, we have a ton of conversations with entrepreneurs, real estate investors, either looking to get started, already have kind of the wind in their sails, and just looking to level up. We've been told since the very beginning, right? Like, not to reinvent the wheel. And with our topic today, talking through kind of this shift in growth and new changes on kind of the sales side of our business, I don't want people to think this is reinventing the wheel. I feel like we're more just graduating from the wooden spoke wheel. Now we're trying to get to the NASCAR wheel entire, baby. So we're not necessarily, and you would know and can validate this better than I can, where we're not trying to share a discussion where we are reinventing the wheel. We're trying to level up the wheel from the wooden spoke to the nice NASCAR wheel and tire.
Yeah. And it's the really hard part about this is that the cart is still moving at all times. So you can't just like take all the wheels off and then expect it to work. You have to like incrementally change each spoke of the wheel as you're reinventing it. So it's definitely been a conceptually difficult challenge. I think the actual outcome that we're looking for is crystal clear. And so I want to kind of start by just talking about what we were doing before and kind of highlighting what was working about it and what wasn't, and then talking more about what we're getting to, and then kind of some of the challenges we're dealing with. So the way we were running our business, even up until the first quarter of this year, was, I called it like the Ford conveyor belt system, which was when we first started the business, I was the person answering the phone. I was the person setting the appointment. I was the person going on the appointment. I was the person closing the seller. I was the person dispoing the deal. I was the person handling the transaction. And like in the art of delegation, I kept adding somebody and then giving them a role, but I wasn't really thinking about like the customer experience. I wasn't thinking about scalability. I was thinking about like in the short term, what can I delegate? And everybody knows like the first level of delegation is like, okay, let's outsource the outbound cold calling, right? And then it was like, let's outsource the people answering the direct mail calls in. Like back in the day, you and I'd be answering those phone calls every hour of the day. That doesn't make sense if you're also the person in front of a seller, right? And so then it got to like, okay, we have a person that like answers the phone calls and then they pass off that information. And now I underwrite the deal and then I schedule the appointment and then I go on the appointment, right? So like over time, I kept delegating tasks out, which was like the right concept, but not the right way. What then happened was like, okay, Scott, you can't close all the deals and manage all this other stuff. So like, let's hire somebody that can help close deals, right? And so we brought in somebody, and now their job was like, okay, we have somebody who's going to answer the phones. We called them ISAs. So the ISAs, inside sales agents, are going to answer the phones. They're going to help, run the numbers, and then they're going to hand that lead off to, the acquisition person who's going to call, do the follow-ups, set the appointments, go out on the appointments and close it. And then it got to the point where it was like, okay, well, we're going to too many appointments. Now this person doesn't have time to make follow-up calls. And what would happen is it got to the point where one person would answer the phone, pass it to somebody who would underwrite the deal and call back to schedule the appointment, would go to a closer who would try to go close it, and then would go to our transaction coordinator who'd manage it. Then it would go to our dispo manager who would be facilitating showings. That's 5 different people. And I feel like most sellers can't keep track of, who they're talking to. And it just felt like it was leading to hiccups in our business and also not clarity for like, what's the most important thing that should be happening here for each person. And so that's kind of where we were at before the beginning of this year.
Well, and it's interesting too, because again, the way a lot of people try and give guidance in this business is we start out exactly the way you described. We're wearing all the hats in the business, and all we hear pretty much is the extent of, okay, your goal is to delegate as many of those hats off to other people as possible so you can focus on the business. But there's really no, at least we did not have a blueprint on maybe the right way to do it. So what's even wrong though? Because in theory, as somebody who's looking to delegate, that kind of conveyor belt system where you've delegated dispo, you've delegated TC, you've made all these pieces and delegations, and the handoff and the conveyor belt's working just fine. What are the primary issues that are happening? What's wrong with that conveyor belt system if everything's delegated?
There was a lot that kind of came to fruition. Like one of the big things was if our deal underwriter person was sick, the business came to a standstill unless, I jump back in, right? Same with like inbound leads. Like, hey, we are missing phone calls because people aren't answering the phones because that's not their job, right? Mm-hmm. And ultimately it was creating like this really weird sense of not complacency per se, but like there was no cross training and like no confidence to step in. And what we were finding was like, if Coca-Cola, if one of their employees leaves, does their business stop working? Right. No. And same for me. Like if Scott wants to take a day off, is our team with that system built correctly? It wasn't really, because it required like the deal underwriter to send it to me to verify. And then it goes to and then it comes back to me. And like, it was always Scott white knuckling way too many portions of the process. And the other part to it was like, there was so much overlap. Like when we built out the sales process on Lucid Chart, it was like the very feedback I got from our coach who was helping us build it out from Sharper was like, Scott, you're involved way too much. Like your team is coming back to you for everything that's not sustainable. And I was feeling that myself. And so the pivot needed to be, how do we create roles where they understand the core like the core concepts and the core mission for that role, right? And delegate like the aspects of the business, not the menial tasks. And so that's kind of where we're moving into.
So then for me, as a more operations or process driven person, that that begged the first question from me, and I remember us talking about this. Then, what is the fine line? I mean, you mentioned cross training. That's the exact phrase that I thought of as you were just talking through that. What's the fine line to finding the balance between cross training, but then also making sure that person in whatever role is still only wearing their hat and they're not wearing multiple hats?
So I want to try to break it down visually. If you were to imagine that our business was just one raging river, that's how everybody was operating. And the way we had it was like each step of the way down the river was like not my response. It was like individuals' responsibilities. Like, okay, every single lead goes down this river. Every single person touches every single lead in some way, shape, or form. What we're trying to do now is to create barriers that separate the streams where we can toggle on or off where the water's going. And so we want to have it where less people have to be involved on each lead. Each person isn't looking at 15 deals a month. They're looking at 3 or 4, and their job is to really work those 3 or 4, right? And their job is to take in opportunities into their stream, right? Increase how much water is going down their pipeline, and then to work those diligently, right? Instead of everybody has overwhelm and burnout because there's too many people to keep track of, right? Like anybody who's been in a business understands it gets to a point where there's too many orders or too many properties or too many opportunities to remember, right? They say the human brain can only remember about 7 things at a time. We were getting to the point where we were getting, 40, 50, 60 leads a week. That's where we're at right now. What happens when every single person has to manage 60 things? Like things fall through the cracks. And so it wasn't that our business wasn't operating. It wasn't operating efficiently with what we had. And so now instead of every person has all of those, it's delegated into pipelines. And so the way that we're starting this transition is we've completely removed the idea of ISAs, internal sales agents, and we've created lead managers. And I want to talk about what their job is first. This is like the biggest part of the delegation that I'm learning is you can't just get into the nitty gritty how-tos. You have to explain the whys, right? And so my coach gave me, Jenny gave me a tool called the GPS, right? It's goals, priorities, systems. And essentially it's the why behind how. And the why for a lead manager, really, there are frontline forces. Their job is to, and they need to all be able to repeat this and know where to find this. It's defined. It's to create a positive customer experience, to qualify the lead, and to manage the data in ReSimpli, our CRM. Okay, those are their 3 goals. Everything that applies to those is part of their job, right? So you break that down. How do you create a positive customer experience for a seller? Well, one, in my book, it's one person talking to the seller, right? They're building a relationship with 1, maybe 2 people. 2, timely conversations, answering the phone when it rings, getting back to people that day, getting, if there's an inquiry in, speed lead, right? Sub 1 minute callbacks. So part of that is that portion. And then the other part is knowing what you're doing, right? Having better understanding of how our business operates, how to qualify sellers by following the sales flows, right? So instead, our prior conversations were very much dictated towards what can you tell me about the property? Tell me about the condition of the home. It got into this very like monotonous condition conversation about the home. And our closers always close off of motivation. It's never based on condition at the end of the day, right? And so tweaking how we're having our conversations with the sellers to make sure that we're qualifying the right people. We know which people do we need to talk to and which people do we not need to talk to, right? And defining what that looks like. And then lastly, creating a process on how we manage these leads so that people aren't getting overwhelmed, right? At any point in time, if I were to give Cade a scenario, Cade should be able within our team to know where that lead should be in the CRM, how to find it, where to find the information, right? When you have a team of 16 people, it gets very easy to lose track of details. And so we're trying to figure out what is the best way for managing all the data in a CRM that is now explorable to all of our other team members.
So essentially, continuing on maybe like a water analogy is, let's say we have a giant swimming pool, and that swimming pool is all of our leads, all of our sellers, right? And our lead managers are the coaches all around the swimming pool. How it was before was all of our leads were all in that swimming pool, all mixed up together. We've got all these coaches running around talking to different people. Sellers are getting different messages from different people. But then now we have those clear swim lanes, and each swim lane is assigned a coach with a certain amount of leads.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, and obviously in like Lucid Chart, they're called swim lanes, right? So it is a good analogy, right? And you and I both swam. Is it easier to get 100 people swimming in a pool if there's no lane lines, or is it helpful to have lanes?
Exactly.
Like, look at a freeway, right? Do all the cars all go down wherever they want? No, it's dedicated roles, right? Hey, you stay in this lane. So here's how we've broken it down now. Our lead manager's job is really the front end of the business, which is answering, talking to sellers, qualifying, and letting sellers disqualify themselves, right? Those people that call in and say, I want way more than what the market will pay. Great. Hey, you're disqualifying yourself. This is not something that we can help, achieve, right? But really trying to figure out the motivation, because at the end of the day, decisions are made on emotion and they're justified with logic. And so our job is to figure out, do they have the needs that we can help solve? Their job from there is to get all the information that we're going to need in order to make a legitimate offer. And then at the end of that first call, they're going for an appointment, right? They're making a suggestion to the seller that, hey, if you're serious about doing X, Y, and Z, then the next best step for you would be to have our team come out to the home, verify the things about the home that you've already talked to us about, so we can talk you through the options that our team can our team can offer, right?
Yeah.
And that is very different than what we were doing before. Before, it was like answer the phone, talk to the seller, get a whole bunch of info about condition, try to come up with a price that we could realistically pay within a range, call the seller back, give them a range, and then if they're cool with that, like, sure, like, let's go out on the appointment. And ultimately, that worked fine. Like what you and I mentioned, we did, almost 80 deals last year, right? 79. It's not like we weren't doing business, but how much business did we leave because at the end of the day, sellers didn't like the number we gave them before coming out? It is so much easier to have an honest conversation in person. And there's also times where what the seller told us was not legitimately true. They either grossly overestimated the repairs needed or grossly underestimated the repairs needed. The best way to do that is to have somebody who's experienced buying these homes go to the home and look at it with their own two eyes in most situations.
Yeah, and I think obviously with myself wearing an operations hat, there is a lot of cross collaboration between acquisitions and operations, but at least from my seat, one of the most impactful changes that I've seen from the outside looking in is, again, at the start, right? When you even start to learn how to talk to sellers on the phone, or even you're training a lead manager or an ISA or whatever role that is in your business, we usually start with a very kind of hard and stagnant script, right? And I think that can serve its purpose at the beginning, especially for new people learning how to talk on the phones. But I think that shift from more of a static script to a fluid framework has been huge to see. And I know we're not even fully fledged, flushing that out, but that transition from that static script to a more fluid type framework on those intake calls or on those outbound calls has made what sounds like at least a world of a difference, even with us just starting to scratch that surface.
Yeah, what you're hitting on is that at the start, a rigid frame, like a rigid script is needed because there is no skill, right? When you're brand new at something, you can't have free reign because you don't know what you're doing. But our team, all the people on our team have been with us for a while, right? I mean, I think the latest hire or the most recent hire we had on the sales team was over 18 months ago. These are all people that we have confidence that they've done enough of these reps that they can make some decisions for themselves. What we're doing now is tailoring our guidelines to not be, these are the exact words you say, Cade. It's, these are the major checkpoints I need you to hit in this conversation. The best analogy I guess I could give on that is, you have trails when you go hiking, right? And those trails tell you exactly what to do. But when you come across like a log in the trail, a script does not give you, you can't predict everything that's going to pop up and block your pathway forward. A script leads to an inexperienced person not knowing what to do and waiting until a manager tells them what to do, right? Go around the log. A framework says, hey, you're starting at the trailhead. I want you to get to the trail end, that lake up on the hill. Follow the trail as much as you can. But if you come into an issue, I have faith that you are a smart enough person, you've dealt with this enough, you can go off the path for a little bit and work your way back on, as long as you end up at this destination, right? Now, that doesn't mean that we start them at the wrong point or we end them at the wrong point, but some of the middle parts are going to be a little different. And so, you know, I noticed there was a lot of pushback from the lead managers when we originally talked about it. They wanted like line by line, how do I say this? As a sales manager myself, I need to give them some examples and some ways to actually implement the concepts. But I have to also make sure that I'm not going and giving them every word that Scott would say, because ultimately I speak differently than they do. I speak differently from them. They speak differently from each other. There needs to be that conversation to create the positive customer experience. Nobody likes getting a call where you give an answer and then the next question was already pre-written out, right?
Exactly. So was that pushback, you think, just coming from a place of familiarity, like years and years and years of just having that script and those exact, you know, checkpoints or boxes to check? Was that, do you think that's where initial pushback came from, was just familiarity with the current process?
Everybody in the business has very similar scripts. And it's so similar that I asked ChatGPT to write me a script and it almost wrote me the same script we have, which tells me every piece of experience that they have is following that model of being told exactly what to say. And so they weren't scared to take the leap to try it, but I think what they were looking for is some guidance on how to try it, right? So when you're talking about like a conceptual topic, like, hey, we're going to talk about their past. Okay, well, give me some some questions to give me an idea of what asking about their past really sounds like, right? And so we give them some of the ideas, and then I say, hey, look, you're not limited to the questions that I put in this call flow. These are to prompt your brain to start thinking about what are questions that are getting us to where we want to go, which is understanding where they're coming from, right?
Yeah. What would be then, because you mentioned it, our business is in a spot where we closed almost 80 deals last year. We've got 13 or 14 team members, the sales team being probably half, if not a little more than that in its totality. With somebody who has a growing business, right? They're not brand new. Somebody who has experience, maybe they've delegated a couple roles or two. If they're looking to shift this framework in order to level up, if they're looking to shift their process to kind of break through that glass ceiling, what is the most important thing to focus on, or what has been the sales team's most important thing to focus on in order to have that waterfall effect from the top down with this shift?
Yeah, I mean, this has been the hard part of this transition. The vision of what the end product looks like is very clear to me. The hard part is we're a cash heavy business. You have to be making money to keep this going.
Yeah.
The realization, and you've seen it, dude, this has been mentally really straining for me because I have to continue to do things the old way while starting things the new way. I'm living outside of alignment because I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't like the way this feels, but I have to do it because this is what has worked and we need it to continue to work. So I guess the way I've conceptualized this is, think about software updates. The product isn't what it always, like it's constantly evolving, right? And so the way that I've been verbalizing this to the team is like, hey, look, this is version 1.0, and then this is version 1.1, and then this is version 1.3, and then this is version 2.0. And so for us, it's taking the 20% that goes to 80% of the 20% of action that leads to 80% of results, right?
Yeah.
I felt, because I like the strategy of the sales game, I felt if we change the first conversation we have with a seller, we change the first impression. And the first impression plays a very big part in getting to the next steps. So when I was looking at this, you can't just say, okay, everything is gone now. And so we've been rolling stuff out, not slowly, but incrementally. We didn't try to change everything on day one. The step one was, hey, here's our conversation. Here's who should be answering these phone calls, right? And it went from being like 1 or 2 people a day to like, okay, these are the 3 people that all of you are responsible for answering these phones, right? Because you're trying to fill your pipeline. You are the CEO of your leads. So if you bring this in, you are signing up to help manage this to the finish line. And so if you start getting overloaded, you communicate with me, we redelegate tasks, we balance the flows. But step 1 was creating like an outline of what that role looks like and getting the concept of why we're doing this first. And then step 2 was, okay, that initial phone call is something that we can change without breaking everything else, right? That initial phone call, let's stop talking about just condition. Let's pivot the conversation to be more about motivation and making sure this is the right type of seller to be working with. And even then, these people have made thousands of calls the old way. It is not that you can expect them to get the exact same results on day 1, and we still need leads to be getting pushed through, right? So it was like, okay, let's make sure our greeting and introduction, they all sound the same. They're exactly what we want, right? So that was the first day, was like, how do we greet and introduce ourselves? Then, hey, how are we going to set expectations on what we're going to talk about, right? Now we're working on what are the questions we ask to get the meat and potatoes of the qualification, right? And this is going to take some time because this is different. It used to be, and Cade, you probably remember this script off the top of your head. So is the property vacant or is it being rented out? Oh, it's vacant. How long has it been vacant? Great. What major updates have you made over the last 5 years, right? It was all condition based. Now it's like, hey, Cade, great. What can you tell me about yourself and your property? Great. What drew you to this house when you originally bought it? Great. And it's going, and they're totally different questions that they shouldn't feel like an interrogation. They should feel like a conversation, right? Hey, I'm just trying to get an idea of where you're coming from and see if we're the right fit for you. Right? So that's how we're rolling it out, is every portion of their role, we have to make small gradual changes and document what the new expectation is. And every time you change something, something downstream gets changed. So then it's also managing expectations with the people downstream. Hey, this is what's changing. If something pops up, this is how we communicate it. This is how we're going to handle it, right? And so we're making small revisions because at the end of the day, this is a very important part of our business. And we can't just not sign any deals for 90 days. That just is not acceptable. So as we're making changes, we still have to be pushing deals through.
If you put yourself in an owner's seat for a second we've both been there, right? Let's just rewind 2 or 3 years ago. We're each in an owner's seat of our own business. You mentioned something earlier. One of our company's core values is alignment. And we have monthly meetings to make sure and do a temperature check on if anything feels like a core value violation or we're not connecting with one of those core values. And you mentioned kind of with this period right now of this growth, you feel a little bit out of alignment. What would you say to the small to medium-sized real estate investor who is in the owner's seat? Their Ford conveyor belt system is working fine, right? Maybe it's not great, but it's working good. They're still closing deals. They're doing some business, but they're scared to put themselves back in and make a shift or an improvement like this, because they may also feel that that's out of alignment and they need to be working on the business instead of back in it. What would be the biggest advice to them, or the biggest talking point to them to say, no, this is something worthwhile and you may need to step back in and make these tweaks and improvements?
I mean, this is by definition working on the business. I'm not the one in the seat making those initial calls. I am the one strategically trying to think through, if we want to get more deals with what we're doing, how do we do that? And so like, that's really the big part. And the reason I said I was out of alignment is because I have this crystal vision of like what I want it to look and feel like, but I have to live within reality, which is, it's not going to just go, Scott, here's the vision, cast it to the team's just going to immediately implement, and it's like, we're going to go from signing 8 to 10 deals a month to like 15, 20 deals a month. That's just not going to happen. And so I see opportunities come in where we're reverting back to our old ways because that's what we're comfortable with. But at the end of the day, I have to accept the fact that like, this is a brand new process, and what we did was working. And I may see like, oh, I don't think that's great because like we just talked about it. At the end of the day, we are implementing piece by piece. I am not perfect. They are not perfect. This idea is not fully fleshed out. I guarantee if I could just snap my fingers and do exactly what Scott's thinking, things would break because I haven't lived through the change, right? I don't know what I don't know. But I mean, I could have absolutely, like you saw it, there was a period of time where I wasn't having to work as much and it was great. And then all of a sudden I just put all this extra work on my plate. But the reasoning why is because if I want to hire another acquisition manager and I want to hire another, sales manager, I am not handing off a system that is repeatable and solid. I'm handing off a system that really works correctly when there's 1 or 2 people and it's like a solopreneur setup. Right? You have a person answering the phones, helping, blah, 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 and I'm going out and closing. But if you want to be doing this at scale, each part of the pipeline needs to actually know what their reasoning is, have the autonomy to make those decisions, and then you can build out almost like CEOs of their own pipelines. And you create a competitive but collaborative environment when you have that.
That was a big takeaway I've gotten too, just from being able to sit in and listen to a lot of the guidance you're getting to implement these changes. Is we do have the unified team, right? We have the synergy. We have the right people now in the right seats. But you mentioned something, again, from the outside looking in, that makes complete sense, is that especially if you're looking to grow and scale your business, it's a fact of the acquisitions department that if you do have multiple acquisitions reps, there needs to be that friendly competition. And that was a light bulb for me, just sitting, again, from the outside looking in. It may like it turned on and clicked a light bulb that wasn't even there to start with. So I think that's a really important point too that you just shared.
Yeah, I mean, like it's like thinking back to our Iron Man. Like, we all worked out together. We were all friends, but we were all competitive, right? And we all were trying to outdo the next person because it was fun, right? It wasn't like we were competing with each other truly and like trying to like hurt the other person from performing. We were trying to help the other person, but also we wanted to win. Like, that competitiveness has to be present in a sales operation or you'll lose. Like, it's just, there are people out there that want sales to be this really easy, like, I just take a couple deals a month or a couple deals a year, and that's fine. It's just not acceptable in our business. Our business wants excellence. And so we want the people that are hungry and competitive and that can be competitive with each other and not let it destroy personal relationships. Like, for example, Marissa, our salesperson, and myself, we are competitive with each other. And I have a leg up in the sense that I have more experience, but Marissa gets a leg up because she gets priority on a majority of the appointments. And we are the first people that we each text when we get a deal, because it's like, hey, how many deals did you sign? Right? How many coffees can you have today? Right? It creates a valuable relationship when you can have that competition without like destroying the friendship there. And I think even within the lead managers, our virtual team members, they like being collaborative, right? Our team is very collaborative, but they're also competitive people, right? They like to like get involved in a little bit of that like messing around, like, hey, I got this many leads yesterday, how many did you get? Right? We need to create a culture where that is valued and it's kept in check with also being collaborative. Hey, I found this new thing that I think really works, here's what I'm doing, right? Or hey, I'm noticing that you're struggling with this is something I can help you with, right? Like running numbers is a big one. Hey, I'm really struggling with running numbers, I notice that you're really proficient at that, can you help me? Right? I'm increasing the competition because I'm increasing myself.
How do you sell that competitive but collaborative culture though? Because that wasn't always like, that's just not, again, a light switch you just flip on. How do you sell that culture to your department? How do you sell that new healthy culture to your acquisitions team or your acquisitions department?
Ultimately, if you're in a sales role, I shouldn't have to sell you on the competitive aspect. There are people that are good at sales and enjoy sales, and there's people that are like do not. I'll ask you this question honestly. Do you like the competitive spirit in sales?
No, I don't like the competitive. I don't like sales in general.
Right. And so I would have to, pump you up every day. Cade, Marissa just went and signed 3 deals in 3 days. I haven't seen you go on an appointment. What's going on? You would not react well to that. I guarantee, though, I know myself well enough that if somebody told me that an immediate peer signed 3 deals in 3 days, I would immediately be like, well, if they could fucking do it, I can do it. Right? Like, that's just who I am. And there's personalities that fit well in there. I don't know if everybody on our team loves the competitive part as much as I do, but that's okay. We are building up that tolerance. We are gamifying the process. 2 ways of doing it. One, salespeople get paid on what they produce, right? It's an eat what you kill business. Yeah. And so people work their pay plan, right? If lead managers want to make more money, they got to qualify more leads, set more appointments, get more contracts signed, right? And then 2, make it visible. Not visible for public shaming, but visible for public appreciation, right? I don't know if you've noticed, but in our morning meetings, I will call out team members that I saw outperform what their current expectation is, right? Hey, this person, I really liked when you did this because I know you were nervous to do it and you did it anyways, and look at how great it showed up for you, right? So I'm not going and saying, oh, hey, this person, you didn't do whatever, that's horrible, you're bad at your job. Like, it's people like to be praised. People like to know that they're doing well. Our team has a standard of excellence for ourselves that we want to aspire to get, right? One of our core values is Kaizen, right? That constant self-improvement, that can be competitiveness in itself. Some of our team members are competitive with themselves. I want to be 1% better than I was yesterday. So I guess the answer is I don't have to sell it to them. I have to create a visual way and an engaging emotional way that gets them excited about it and not nervous about it, right?
Where would you say, as we're kind of gearing up to finish up here, you mentioned this has been a step-by-step type rollout. The end result in the vision is very, very clear. If you were to call that version perfect 0.0, where are we right now?
I think I can better explain it on a percentage of 100. I think right now we're getting closer to like 20%. Here's what I'm seeing is going really good for us right now. Our lead managers have a crystal clear idea of what they need to be doing. Like, what is the outcome that they're responsible for? The initial conversations with sellers are very solid. They're a little bit bumpy because it's a brand new process, but for being less than a month into this, it is outpacing what normal expectations I would have had for this. The feedback system for when issues are happening is becoming more clear, right? Like I mentioned, every time we break something upstream, something downstream is going to be affected, right?
Yeah.
And so the feedback loop is becoming quicker so that these problems don't compound and we lose out on opportunities. Here's what we're missing. We're missing a written process that can be referred back to, that everybody knows where to go, where to find it, what to look for, how to read it. That's going to be a really big milestone. And I have a feeling I'm going to get 80% of the way to this goal. And that last 20% will be the documentation process. And I don't know if we'll ever hit the 100. I think that's really an important thing to like acknowledge, is by the time we're close to the 100, guess what? Something new will pop up that we think is, oh, well, we could tweak this and it would be better. And we'll start tweaking that. So the sales process is very much a fluid thing. It is not like, think about how when enough water runs down a river, what happens? It starts moving, right? Erosion happens, and that's how you get those windy banks. That's what happens in the sales process. So many leads come through, we start identifying new pitfalls in our new process, and we start making tweaks, right? And eventually you started with this one really rigid form, and now you're in this very fluid form that works much better for the majority of leads.
Ties back to, you shared it, one of our other core values of Kaizen, just continuous improvement, 1% better every day. We have the clear vision, but there's never going to be a version perfect 0.0. It's always going to be a constant and continuous improvement.
Yeah, markets change, exit strategies change, the business itself changes and its priorities. And so we have to be always locked into like where we're trying to go and accepting the fact that we'll never get there.
I love it, dude. Bro, absolutely killer topic today. I was very excited. I know we were getting this recording on the schedule and coming in with this topic, especially, with our refreshed mission of the podcast. We want to, I felt like we had pulled back the curtain pretty well on our 150 plus episodes up until this point. But this is truly the definition of sharing what we're going through and literally giving you guys the camera and seeing it on the big screen, as building the plane as we fly it. So, dude, absolutely killer job. Loved it.
Thanks, man. I hope that I was able to conceptualize some of the stuff I'm dealing with. This is such a broad topic that like we could go as minute or as big as we wanted. And so hopefully people got the concept really that like defining how we delegate is probably the biggest mistake that we made. And now we're having to fine tune an already fast moving business into a more refined thing. And you can't just change all things at once. You have to like strategically think through what's the 20% that will make the 80% difference.
Bar. Clip it. Done.
Bar. Bar. It's like the fourth time you said bar today. I love it.
I know, dude. I know. Well, man, another great episode. We will be back. I know what we've got in the pipeline, especially with our shift to virtual, is just searching not only to share some of these higher level sales and biz ops and financial topics with you guys, but also searching for some really high level people all over the country that we can bring in onto this podcast. And so stay tuned. We've got a lot of exciting stuff in the pipeline, and we will see you guys on the next episode of the Pursuit of Property podcast, baby. Let's go.
Pleasure flying with you.
Yes, sir.